Welcome to our in-depth education for today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tanya Cross and I am a leadership coach. I also coach coaches in helping them to share their service with the world. So welcome to this topic. It is on, are you projecting your stuff? So are you projecting your stuff onto your clients? And how to really turn your personal projections into your superpower. So that is our topic for today. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to explore this topic of projection with the concept of the shadow self. So I'm going to go into more detail in terms of what is projection and what is your shadow self. But as a coach, we can sometimes unconsciously or maybe even consciously project our own unresolved issues onto our clients. And so we want to be able to really identify our projections and notice them when they're coming up so that we can give our clients maximum results with the time that we have with them. So today we are going to be going through the process of projection, how projection shows up in your client sessions, and what's your specific projection, and 3 action steps that you can take today to start to dissolve that. So we have a resource for you inside of this class. So if you would love to get that resource in your hot little hands, just type in project below. If you're watching the replay, there's a download just below you for that. And if you're getting the one in the chat, we'll send it to you. The team will get it over to you now. So again, if you're watching live, comment live. If you're watching replay, comment replay. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so have a look at projection. So what is projection and how does it essentially show up in our client session? So first of all, Freud was the one that coined this term. And so this was like a long time ago, like late 1800s, that he coined this term. And it's really this describing how we would have this feeling inside of us that was uncomfortable and we didn't like. And instead of being able to deal with that, we would project that experience onto someone else and then talk about that experience from another person, another individual's perspective. So an example of this was that if someone imagined that their neighbor was talking and gossiping about her, it's because that particular individual had shameful feelings that they didn't want to experience and work through. And so they project an experience of shame and they view the world that way. And so sometimes, so a little bit later on, when Carl Jung came on, because he started to study human behavior as well, and so then he started to say that projection was this fear of the unknown, and that it was something that we would be unsure of the unknown of what was going to happen, and so we project onto the experience a lens of the world. And that's because we have a desire inside of us to actually have a predictable and very ordered reality or patterned world. And so that helps to, when we put a projection on, it helps to put order into the world if there's things that we don't know. So if you'd love the resource for this, just type in project below and we'll get that to you. So let me go through the shadow self and also having a deeper understanding of that. So the shadow self is coined by Carl Jung, and Carl Jung had said it was the unconscious part of ourselves. And so it's the part of ourselves that we repress, that we hide away, that we deny inside of ourselves, and we don't essentially want to show to people. And that can also be, it's not just, we instantly go to negative and we all think, oh, the things that I don't want to show, like I don't want to be an ass or whatever it is. It's like not just negative, because there are sometimes perceived positive traits, actions or inactions that we have also hiding away. We're repressing, for example, creativity. Some people are like, oh, I'm just not creative. And so really it's any unintegrated trait, action or inaction, that's part of our shadow self. And so essentially, if we look at the formation of our shadow self, it comes through our kind of morphing of the external world as well. There are certain aspects, maybe in different cultures, in different family dynamics, in which we're maybe praised for academic accolades, or praised to be creative, or praised to be into music. And so because of that, we can kind of morph and see that there's parts of ourselves that are really expressive, and then there's also a hidden shadow self as well. And so essentially the shadow self is the parts that we're repressing, the parts that we deny. So if you're part of and are familiar with the application of the Demartini method, and we look at the specific traits, actions, and inactions that we perceive in the outside world, and we're like, oh, but I don't have that, and we deny that. Think about that as your shadow self. And so what happens is when we're in a coaching dynamic and we have this unrepressed side of ourselves, it can show up in the coaching dynamic. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. And I'm going to explain through the process of projection. So I want you to imagine that a particular coach, and they have been working with high performance coaches and people who are like ambitious in going places, let's say, for example. Yet them as a coach are feeling unfulfilled, unsatisfied, not really and as inspired as what they used to be, and they've lost their mojo a little bit. And so unconsciously what can happen is, because they've got this repressed part of themselves, maybe they're not publicly going and showing that out to the world, then what can happen is when the client comes to them and they're like go-getter, they're ambitious, they want to go and achieve things, that the coach can then go and through their lens and their kind of like murky lens of the world can go and see this particular client and go, well, what's the drawback of that? What's the downside of what you want? And maybe filter their own experience and try to bring that client down and be more grounded. So there can be that like external, because there can be a trigger from the client, and they see them going places like, oh, it feels inadequate inside. There can be this internal conflict that the coach has. It's like, gosh, I see this individual as like such a go-getter, but I want that, but I'm not doing that right now. And so there's this like kind of grating internally of challenge within them, and not feeling like their public and private life are one and the same. They don't feel integrated with who they publicly go and work with, or how they go out to the world, and their internal. They can also have an element of repression as well, like a repression of how they feel about things. So I don't want to face that right now, because you want to put out a projection onto the world of who you think that you need to be. And so that can interfere, because imagine that that's the lens in which you see yourself. And if we see sometimes the world through our own eyes and lenses, that's actually like a filter between you and your ability to truly be able to help another individual. So that's how it sometimes can show up in terms of our client sessions. Now, sometimes it can be really subtle and we haven't even really been aware of noticing it, but I'm going to show you an exercise in just a moment on how we can start to like unpack with our coaching clients what is our stuff versus their stuff. And we'll see if there's an overlap. So if you would love the resource for this, then just type in project and we will get that to you now. So I'm going to go through the resource with you right now. So this will get you to start to think about your client coaching sessions, and then be able to have an opportunity to maybe see where there's an element potential of projection with a client. So let's have a look. So this is the resource you have inside of when you get the download. So what I want you to imagine with this right now is that this is a Venn diagram. We do lots of Venn diagrams here. I want you to imagine that this is you and this is your clients. I think I might just change my pencil. That didn't work. Okay, that's fine. So I want you to imagine these are your clients. So I want you to think about multiple clients, or think about one particular client, doesn't matter. But I want you to think about clients that you currently have, and what's problems or challenges that they're facing right now, and difficulties they have in their life, but also something that is also overlapping with your life. So you're going to put whatever's overlapping. You're like, I'm also going through that, or that's painful for me right now. You're going to put in this section here. And then anything that it's like, no, that's definitely their challenge, is outside in the client area. So I'm going to think about, I'm going to do one now. Okay, I'm going to think about a client, and they have financial struggles. So with their financial struggles, it's we'll call it epic. not a technical word, but let's call that. And we'll have financial struggles. So we're going to put that. So that's definitely something that I don't relate to at this present, relative to what they're going through though. They've got quite a large financial struggle. So they've got a messy exiting of a relationship. So I'd also say so ex relationship. I'd also say that's not something that I also am going through or have gone through into the degree that they have. So I'm going to keep on going. Let me think about something where there might be an element of projection. Okay, so there's an element of a struggle with life. So of like life, let's say failures. So I can definitely see there's some kind of commonality there that I sometimes still have bubbling up inside of me, where I can feel and perceive myself to have had elements of failure, and I can see a commonality between what they're going through and also what I have, and maybe also there's still a little bit of residual I can sense inside of my body that I haven't yet resolved. So yeah, I'm definitely going to say there. So as you do this and you think about the multiple clients you have, essentially what you get inside of here, which is so beautiful, inside of all of this area here, you have now content to go and work on. You have access now for you to now start to work through what are some of the challenges or issues. If you're wondering what can I work on, and you're like, what else is there left for me to work on because I've done so much work, or you're at the beginning and you're wanting to know what's the next best, most purposeful step, that content in there is perfect for you to be able to now go and apply, say, the Demartini method. Come to our mindset classes that we have each and every week. We apply 2 columns of the Demartini method in a group coaching setting, and it gives you the opportunity to shift some of these dynamics, because one of the key aspects with your personal development journey is you have to be doing work on yourself, so we can clear that hazy maze that we might have in front of us, so we're not filtering our own stuff and projecting it onto our clients, that we're actually able to heal our own dynamic, and then we're not healing ourselves through the work that we're doing with others. We're doing our own healing, and then we show up completely open and helping our client that is sitting in front of us. Okay, so then there's something else when it says, like, how does projection show up in our psyche? So I want to come back to and you might have seen this before if you've studied psychology before, but it's called the Johari window. And let me just go through that with you now. So this window is essentially an insight into human behavior, but it's also going to give you a deeper insight into maybe where your potentially your projections might lie. So hang out with me, team. So this is what we have. We have a window like this. And so what we have is essentially our different components, which are understanding our whole self is maybe the best way to do it. So we have an open self. So we have an open part of ourselves, which is very transparent, open. People perceive it, see it, know it, and aware of it, and or maybe even known by it or known for it. So this is not the shadow self, by the way. This is a very known self. We also have a blind self. So a blind self is where you don't perceive that you have an awareness of it, and you have blind spots, but other people tell you about it. Did you know that you do this? And you're like, no, but thank you so much for telling me. Those moments. We also have a unknown self, and an unknown self is a little tricky to find, because how do you know what you don't know and no one else also knows it either? Yeah, that's like a paradox in itself, hey team. So that one's a little bit more trickier to spend time to uncover and unpack. And then we also have this other part, which is really around our hidden self. And so our hidden self is also our shadow self. And so that's the part that we want to hide away. So if you were to use this as a, what's open, that you're publicly opening and showing and sharing and publicly displaying. And so it could be like genuineness, for example. And then what's the blind self that you say and that you're like, oh, I didn't even know that. And that could be, for example, speak over or speaking over. And then there could be a hidden self. It's like, oh, what's that? And that could be like the failure component that we were talking about just before. And so there's this dynamic, and the unknown of unknown. I don't know. I'm going to have to spend some time in that to figure out what that one is. And so this is a great way to just use as a tool for us to really have a deeper dive into our perception of ourselves and also where our shadow self is. So you might have 5 or 6 TAIs or traits, actions, and inactions that you find under your open, your blind, and your hidden self. And so you can get to really have a deeper understanding of who you are, what you're hiding, and there also then where is there work to work on and to resolve. And so that's also then the greatest strategy I know to figure out what your projection is. So if you want the resource for this, type in project and we'll get it to you straight away. So first of all, if you want to know which is my projecting self, we've got the Venn diagram that you can use. You can also use the window to be able to become more aware of it. And so once you are aware and you know what it is, we want to start to understand and I call it like kind of untangling your stuff with your client's stuff so that we can show up the most open and the most resourceful that we can be for our clients. And so one thing is we want to identify and recognize our own patterns. When we notice our patterns in our life, then we're more likely to also notice someone else's patterns. We also want to know if we have biases and then how our biases show up in a particular client session. We want to recognize our own internal conflict and stuff versus someone else's. And essentially the action steps that you can do in order to start shifting this is, one is do the work on yourself. If you're not regularly applying, say, the Demartini method or whatever strategy and tactic that you use to resolve and dissolve your own emotional charges, that I would highly recommend that you dedicate at least an hour a week to your own personal development journey, because as you clear and shift your own dynamic, you have a greater and larger and wider perspective of things. It isn't just this intellectual knowing, but it's a deep felt knowing. So that's what we do here at Maximum Growth. We have a container for you to be able to do at our basic level 4 classes every single week that give you an opportunity to come in, hang out with the community and apply your own personal development work to whatever dynamic is working for you. And so that is definitely the top tip that I have for you to be able to shift it. So notice your patterns, work on those, and then also notice your triggers inside of the coaching session. So I hope that you have loved the session today on the shadow self, on projecting, and essentially, like, how do we then use this as your superpower? So this is not something that we should hide away and be shameful of, because we want to be able to use our mess as our message and be able to take whatever it is that is our hidden shadow self, and how do we utilize that and be able to use that as our superpower and our strength in being able to share maybe stories with clients, to be able to have the certainty from within that when we heal that part of ourselves, that has the ability then to be able to transform and help and heal someone else's life as well. So I hope that you have loved this session. If you know someone who would love this training as well, please feel free to tag them below or share this session with them. That would be very inspiring. So thank you so much, team. If you're interested in coming along for our Maximum Growth Academy and interested in hearing more about that, definitely reach out to us. We have an amazing community of coaches who are growing themselves to grow their coaching business and share their service with the world. We have a pathway and a plan for you, and lots of trainings and mindset questions you can do to remove the roadblocks so that you can get your service out there with the world. So thank you so much, team. I hope you have a beautiful day wherever you are in the world, and I look forward to seeing you at the next perfect time. Thank you, team.